All right, this is Gene Roberts, and we are here with Judge Emily Miskel of the 470th Judicial District Court located in Collin County, Texas. Judge Miskel has really become one of the front runners, I guess, in moving courts to the online space. And she was recently involved, along with Judge Keith Dean, on a ADR procedure called a summary jury trial, where the jury selection was online and available to the public, and wanted to talk with her today. So thank you so much, Judge, for your time today. We appreciate it. Judge,
happy to be here.
Judge, we've had summary jury trials on the books since 1987. It's one of about 5 different dispute resolution procedures in what's known as the ADR statute. And that includes things like mini trials, mediation, arbitration, moderated settlement conferences. My sense is that there's not a lot of summary jury trials that happen, and there's probably some reasons for it. I would just want to get sort of your impressions. What are your impressions and experiences about summary jury trials?
Sure. So I shared the same perspective when I was an attorney and I was flipping through, CPRC chapter 154 and wondering who the heck would do that, right? Why would you voluntarily go to a jury trial that doesn't count? But now from the court perspective, what I see is our dockets are so heavy in our state district courts that, for example, we are expected to resolve about 10 cases a day every day that we're there. So if you're going to take 2 weeks for your civil trial, that's 100 cases worth of time. And so we just don't have 100 cases worth of time to give every case that thinks they might need 2 weeks. So it is the practice of the civil courts in Collin County that if you're requesting a really long civil jury trial, you can have it, but before you can get your 2-week trial date, you need to go to a summary jury trial. And so I think it is very successful in Collin County when it's implemented by the courts as a requirement. If you need a long trial, we need you to try everything you can to settle this case first, including a summary jury trial.
What's been your experience with the outcome of the summary jury trials? Do they end up getting cases resolved, or do you find that they actually end up going to the 2-week-long trials?
Yeah, so in talking to the civil courts that regularly use them, they are very successful because you are getting a perspective of what real jurors in the county think about your case. And also, after the jurors come back with a verdict, the attorneys spend quite a bit of time having a conversation with them about, did you like our expert? What did you think about the exhibits? What did you pay attention to? What was most helpful? What didn't you care about at all? Did you like my client? That kind of stuff. And so even more than just the bare verdict, getting the feedback from your actual jury pool about your case, I think can help the parties and attorneys get realistic about the value of the case.
In addition to that, what sort of feedback have you heard from participants in the case, whether it's the attorneys, the parties to the suit, even the jurors? I mean, we can't go into confidential things because the actual process is confidential, but have you heard some feedback that you can share with us from those participants?
Sure. So I think the attorneys were cautiously willing to try this. We reassured them that, look, you're required to do a summary jury trial before you get your jury trial. If it goes down in flames, you've checked the box, you won't have to go back and do it again. So we really wanted to do this pilot in a way that would not add cost or delay to the parties. We didn't want to burden anyone. So I think they were cautious about it, but willing to do it. They had been set to do an in-person summary jury trial in March that got unexpectedly canceled due to the pandemic. So when we followed up and said, we're still doing it, it's going to be in May, it's going to be by Zoom. No attorney likes to be the one to test a new thing, but they were good sports. They were very prepared. They did a wonderful job. I could definitely tell that they had practiced in advance. And I think when it was all done with, they felt better about the process than before they started. I think many attorneys and judges that I talk to are concerned about whether you can assess a witness's credibility over Zoom, over video conferencing. And those of us who have done them before are like, yes, you can see their face, you can see their eyebrows, you really get a good idea of the witness's credibility. But until you've done it, I think rightly so, judges and attorneys are cautious about it. And I think specifically in this case, the attorneys were cautious about it to start with, but after it was over, they felt like they had been able to do everything that they needed to do. And I think they were pleasantly surprised. The jury, surprisingly, was wildly enthusiastic about it. I hadn't predicted that, but they loved it. They liked that it was respectful of their time. So it's very efficient. They logged on at 8:30. The trial started at 9. You know, the panel that was excused was done by 10:30. The panel that was selected was done by 4:30. And then they logged off and they're already home, compared to finding childcare, driving to the courthouse, waiting around for a few hours. So number one, they liked that it was efficient with their time. But number two, this was the part that I really hadn't predicted in advance. The jurors loved that you could see the witnesses and the exhibits right up close. We talked to 4 jurors who had served previously in in-person jury trials, and they were like, we were looking at the side of the witness's head. We couldn't see the videos. We couldn't see the blow-ups. They were on an easel across the room. But when we did it this way, the videos were right on our phone. We could see the witnesses' faces right up close. And so the jurors loved that they saw everything right up close. And when I was watching their eyes, so I kept scrolling through during the trial and watching their faces and eyes, it can sometimes be the case that in in-person jury duty, the jurors may lose focus and wander off with their eyes. But in this Zoom jury trial, everybody's eyes were facing forward the whole time. Their faces were engaged. So I was really impressed with how much the jurors were engaged in the process.
You know, that is really interesting, and I hadn't thought about that either. You know, I've been in the courtroom a lot in my career, and we put up an easel or maybe something on a big screen, an Elmo type machine, that type of thing. And there's a lot of things to distract a juror, or it's not in their line of sight. But here you've got the exhibits, like you said, right in front of you. And we're really used to seeing things on computer screens or TVs. And this actually may be more natural for them than being in a courtroom and observing things that go on. That's some good insight.
Yeah, I remember when Kindle first came out with their Kindle app for phones. I remember everyone was like, what? You can't read a book on your phone. And here I am years later, pretty much I only read books in the Kindle app on my phone. So.
It's, and you know, the other thing that strikes me is that this is really, online platforms is really opening up courtrooms, yours and a lot across the state. You know, we know that the Texas Constitution has this open courts provision, but as you were saying earlier, sometimes it's tough to get to the courtroom. You got to drive, find parking, got to pay for parking, those sorts of things. And this really makes it a lot easier, it seems like, for people to participate. Let me ask you this, when it comes to summary jury trials.
Sure, and especially I'm in a hold on, I think I froze.
Go ahead, I'm hearing you now.
I think I froze. I don't know what's going on. I'm hardwired.
It happens.
Let me check one thing.
Well, and while you're doing that, if I may say something else too,
Yeah.
one of the things I've noticed with you and some other judges who are doing this, there's an awful lot of grace that's being afforded to people because of unexpected technology bumps that occur. And I really appreciate that level of grace that's shown by and to other people.
Yeah, it's hard because we really are spending about the first 10 minutes of every proceeding making sure everyone's connected, checking, you know, all that. But that's just the nature of it. I'm happy to be able to hold court at all.
Well, and the people need court to be held because we still have disputes that need to be resolved. Let me ask you this, if I may, what advice would you give to people who are advocates, attorneys, about summary jury trials? If you were to give some practice pointers, if you would, what would you say to the attorneys?
So the number one thing, so to recap how we do it in Collin County, because I'm not sure it's the same everywhere, but in Collin County, they pick 12 jurors. Each side gets about an hour and a half to try the case. Oh, let me back up. The voir dire process is very abbreviated. Judge Dean said he usually gives the parties about 7 minutes per side. Since we were doing this for educational purposes, I asked him to double that to 15 minutes per side, which normally in regular court, we'd give you 30 or 45 minutes per side. But it's a very abbreviated voir dire process. He said that usually they don't do any strikes at all. They just take the first 12 unless someone like works for one of the companies. And okay, so abbreviated voir dire process followed by an hour and a half presentation. Parties can call witnesses, cannot, can publish evidence, cannot, can basically treat it like an extended argument if they want to. So basically an hour and a half per side to explain your case in the best way that you want to. Then what he will do is divide the 12 jurors into 2 panels of 6, have them deliberate separately, have them return separate verdicts, and then everybody gets as much time as they want to chat with the jurors and find out what they thought about the case. So the feedback that we got in this trial, and that Judge Dean says he gets in every trial, is that they just didn't have enough time to put on all their evidence. And he said, you know, whether it's in person or not, we get that. We've given you an hour and a half to put on what you say you need 2 weeks to put on. So obviously you're not going to get into all the detail that you would, but it still allows everybody to get a fair assessment of, is your client hateable? Is your evidence good? Is your expert, can he communicate with human beings? You know, all that kind of stuff. So I hope the parties found it useful. From watching everything, it seemed like it was a really productive proceeding.
From a judicial perspective, what sort of pointers or best practices would you give to your fellow judges about summary jury trials?
What I really appreciated in this case was the attorneys were very well prepared. They had presentations that moved through their evidence, called out the relevant parts through highlighting or text boxes. Their videos were integrated and ran seamlessly. So especially because you only have an hour and a half to put on the high points of your case, if you can rehearse it in advance, be comfortable with the technology you're using to publish your exhibits, your depositions, your witnesses, whatever it is, it obviously takes a lot more work up front to make something shorter, right? We all know that.
That's one of the things in the mediation practice too. Sometimes mediators will ask for a sort of position paper before the mediation, and you've really got to condense things, your case down to a few pages. And it's really hard to do, but it really helps to focus on what's critical to this case. What are your thoughts about using an online platform for summary jury trials? One of the things that kind of strikes me is that one reason why they're not used very often is because they take up valuable, courtroom space that real trials need. But we can move things to an online space that doesn't take up real estate, so to speak. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts in the future of an online platform for summary jury trials.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Especially we're becoming oversubscribed at our Collin County courthouse and have had to limit things like depositions at the courthouse or mediations at the courthouse. I think it really worked to do it online. I don't think we're ready to start mandatory online civil trials yet, or criminal, but I think that the format worked for a summary jury trial, and I'd be willing to do it again for a summary jury trial. I think it was adequate. I think the jurors loved it. I think the parties got valuable information. So if you want to do a remote summary jury trial, start tomorrow. The technology will work.
Anything else you'd like people to know about summary jury trials in Texas?
It was not something that I had a lot of experience with as a lawyer. So I think it's a valuable tool. And I think it's probably a matter of educating judges on the value of it, in that to avoid giving 2 weeks of your docket to one case, you can help the parties go to this ADR process, talk to real jurors, and really settle their case with valuable information. So I think probably to make it more popular, it has to come from the judges, I would guess. But I think it's very persuasive to the judges, very focused on the things we're concerned about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for all that you're doing in the online judicial sphere. We appreciate it.
Great, and I apologize that my connection is glitching. It's worked all day and now it's bad, but who knows?
It's been a long it's been a long day, and I'm sure it's tired.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi's tired. All right, anything else?
Thank you.